Hi friends, myself is Mrs.S.Nusrath Najeeba, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science SF, the Standard Fireworks, Rajaratnam College for Women, Sivahasi. In this video lesson, we are going to learn about the Access Data Source Control in ASP.NET. These are the learning objectives of today's lesson. We are going to see the introduction and its properties, methods with an example. An Access Data Source Control is designed to work with Microsoft Access. It uses OLEDB data provider internally. OLEDB data provider classes are defined in the system.data.oledb namespace. The Access Data Source class is a data source control that works with Microsoft Access databases. Like its base class SQL data source, the Access Data Source Control uses SQL queries to perform data retrieval. One of the unique characteristics of the Access Data Source Control is that you do not set the connection string property. All you need to do is set the location of the access, that is .mdb file in the data file property, and the access data source takes care of the underlying connection to the database. You should place access databases in the app_data directory of the website and reference them by a relative path. This location offers additional security for data files because they are not served if they are requested directly by the client web browser. You bind data bound controls to an access data source using the data source ID property of the data bound control. These are the features, that is the properties of the Access Data Source Control. Sorting. It is used to set the data source mode property to the dataset value. The next feature is the filtering. Set the filter expression property to a filtering expression used to filter the data when the select method is called. Paging. The access data source does not support direct paging operations on an access database. A data bound control such as the grid view can page over the items returned by the access data source if the data source mode property is set to the dataset value. The fourth property, that's the main feature, updating. It sets the update command property to a SQL statement which is used to update the data. This statement is typically parameterized. The next one is deleting. Set the delete command property to a SQL statement which is used to delete the data. This statement is typically parameterized. Next, inserting. It sets the insert command property to a SQL statement used to insert data. The last one is the caching property. It sets the data source mode property to the dataset value and the enable caching property to true, and the cache duration and cache expiration policy properties according to the caching behavior you want for your cached data. This is an example source code for Access Data Source Control. In this we can see the first line is ASP:access data source ID, which refers which access source we are using. Next, this is the view that is used in the Access Data Source Control, that is the grid view. Using the grid view we can view the access database as a table in our websites. Okay. Here are the steps for using Access Data Source Control. First of all, drag and drop the Access Data Source Control from the toolbox and configure Access Data Source. After that, the Configure Data Source wizard will now open. In this we can see the browse button. Using the browse button we can select the access database file which we are going to insert in our web page. Then we are selecting the data by query from database. If you want to test them, you can use this test query method. By clicking the test query button, we can check whether the database is connected properly or not. This is the final result of the access data source.